Okay, what can I say more than Joni is just the best? She is a coach, she is a mentor, she is a financial whiz, she is a health advocate. It's everything wrapped up in one, and she's really got some cycles to go through that I think you should really listen to. If you're into wellness, if you're into financial wellness, if you're into just being well, this is the interview for you. I hope you enjoy. Again, you can find her at prosperityplace.com. So I am super excited just to speak with you because, I don't know what happened, but I fell into your circle of influence.
Yes.
So when I heard you and Gene having your discussion the other day, and Gene Hammett's a friend of mine, and we've worked together as well, I really felt like a kindred spirit was there. And the reason why is because of the transformation more than the money thing.
Uh-huh.
Because your big story, or I think your big world is, in the reason why you're in Santa Fe and you moved out and you become, sort of this, I don't know, what would you call yourself now?
Well, I have to have a label,
Right.
So I call myself a business and money coach.
I think you're a transformation coach.
Okay.
You know why I think the transformation? Because you have so much experience. And I mean that because you've been through a lot of these transformations.
Oh, yeah. I've been on the planet a long time and have had a chance to reinvent myself multiple times. And when I listen to the 30-year-olds, it's like, isn't it wonderful that they haven't gotten beaten down by life enough yet?
Well, that's right. And I think that's what you kind of bring a whole level of different viewpoint, because you've been through retrospect a couple of these loops, right? If you could
absolutely.
And you're so damn happy, and you can tell when you're
Well, to me, humor helps a lot.
Right. So, one of the things I noticed is that your skill set is really based off of, I think, your communication skills.
Uh-huh.
And I listened to the recordings that you have. Of course, I've listened to, I think, pretty much every podcast you have at this point.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And the one thing I noticed is, you're so interested. I mean, I don't know if you're just kind of like their style, but you always seem to be able to, show so much enthusiasm with these people. Like every call is like you're so interested.
Yeah, I am. I love people.
Right. So let's talk about that. And this is one of the things I wanted to talk about. How you love people, and how this. I think that's a big difference between you and a lot of the other consultants/coaches, is that you really have gone through a couple of these transitions, and you've talked to a lot of these people about your transitions as part of your world. And one of the things you mentioned that got me really interested is the learning about the financial world, of being aware. And I'm just as bad as anybody else. I swear I'm just not spending the time and getting the rituals set up to be self-aware. Maybe you could talk about that, because I think that would help a lot of our listeners.
Sure. Whatever you want to talk about. I never run out of things to say.
So what would you recommend? Now, a lot of our
Are we starting now or what?
Yeah, we started.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So what I was saying is a lot of our listeners,
yes,
and people who would be on this type of show, what they really like is actionable things. Like what?
Okay.
And that's what I was saying. Like even myself, I can tell you right now, we are not as good at financially being aware of what's going on, and that's just because honestly I don't have the time, and I think that's a bad excuse.
Yes, it is, because it means you haven't made the time.
That's right. So there's rituals involved, and that's what I was trying to get to.
And habits.
Yes.
Okay. At some point, you have to decide that this is a priority. And you have to be not concerned about making mistakes, and not care that you don't know everything there is to know. You have to be willing to feel stupid.
All right.
I'm good at
And
that.
it's like today, I was reconciling my QuickBooks account, and there's something that just isn't working. And I tried to go back to another month, and I'm going to have to call my accountant and find out how I screwed it up. Even though I've been using QuickBooks for years, I'm not a QuickBooks expert. But I make the decision that this is something I have to do because every single successful person who's successful financially, I have heard them say, and I've asked them on my podcast, and they all tell me you have to know your numbers.
Yes.
Not in touch with your numbers, you don't know your business.
Yeah, you're right.
And so people who say, well, I'm not good with numbers, well, then learn how to be good with numbers. It's not rocket science, especially with the computer that does all the math for you. You just pretty much have to enter it in. And you have to learn how to reconcile. I think that really helps. And you have to keep track of your money. And I say it's like flossing your teeth. It's something you know you have to do, but you don't want to do it. But if you do it every day, in the long run, it's going to save you a lot of money.
So I hear you. So, there's two types of numbers, though. And I think this is the thing. And I coach people, too, in agencies, smaller agencies than we are. But what I'm amazed is that they're going off of sales numbers when I talk to them. I'm like, okay, so what did you put in the bank? Oh, that's a different story. I'm like, no, that's your number. Your number is not how much sales you get. It's what you're putting in your bank.
Well, there's a number of numbers you have to watch. One is your gross,
Right.
which is what you're bringing in.
Right.
And what your gross profit is,
Right.
which is your gross minus your cost of goods. And then your profit, which
Right.
is the bottom line number.
Right.
Now, that gets kind of dicey for solopreneurs because so much is mixed in. Like I have a corporation that's an S Corp, so it's really connected to my personal, but I take certain expenses from my business that it's kind of mixed in. But I still, at the end of the year, I pay taxes
Yeah.
on what comes out is the profit minus whatever my accountant takes out.
Right.
And what I think is a good idea once you start making a decent amount of money is to have your whoever's doing your taxes. I personally would not try to do them myself because I can't keep track of the laws, and have the tax person check you at least once every 6 months to see how you're doing.
Yes. Yes.
And like this year, I'm making, during the second half of the year, I'm making a lot more than I did the first half. So after 3 months, I said, let's go over this and tell me if I'm putting enough aside for taxes.
Right. Right.
Because I'd rather get a refund than have not enough put aside.
Right. Right. And for a lot of people who listen to this podcast, I don't know necessarily how level they are within the framework of even looking at these intricacies of net profit or gross profit versus that. I think they look at a bank account and that's about it. And
if they haven't bounced a check today, they're okay. And if they bounce a check, they call up the bank and try to make an excuse for having done it.
yeah.
And hope they'll reverse the charges. So I'm big on curing financial vagueness syndrome. I've noticed that financial fear and financial vagueness go together.
Right.
So it depends upon what you want to achieve for yourself. If you want to be free of financial fear, if you want to make more than you're accustomed to making, then you're going to learn about money management. Now, you know my stuff well enough to know that's not all I focus on.
Of course.
Because if you're resisting doing this, if you have issues with money, if you deal with your shame and anger and deprivation and you're acting that out through your money, well, then you're going to resist it forever. So I think you have to work on two things. One is learning how to keep track of your money. I don't expect people to do the intricacies in the beginning. In my book, Build Your Money Muscles, I show people how to do it by hand if you want, how to write down how much you earn and how much you make, and how much you spend every month, and how to categorize those expenses. And with some of my clients, I have a client who's making $25,000 a month. And one of the things we do during the coaching sessions now is he finally got iBank, which is the Mac version of QuickBooks. And I check his, when he first got it, he set it up, and then I checked and helped him create the categories. So I don't have any judgment about people who haven't done this yet. You just haven't done it yet. And if you want to do it, it's like learning anything new. You just have to decide to learn it.
Right.
And get someone to help you learn it. It's not rocket science. It really is just logic. And some people, particularly a lot of people who are coaches or healers or solopreneur types, they're very right brain oriented. And their left brain, which is the part of you, if you want to divide it up so equally, that handles the numbers and the logic and everything else. And you have to make a decision to equal them out. And I remember when I first started doing this, I would do numerical sequences for myself, like start with number 2, add 4, subtract 1, add 4, subtract 1, and just doing mental math, just to get that neural pathway in my brain going, because it's like any muscle. If you don't use it, it doesn't work.
That's right. So what would you recommend for rituals? What would you say would be the best thing if, say, somebody was somewhere in that mid-tier, maybe they're past 25,000, maybe they're between 25,000, 50,000 a month, 75,000 a month, or it doesn't really matter, actually. But what would you say if it put them in QuickBooks, right? So that would be a move. And then how often should they look at QuickBooks?
I look at it almost every day.
Ah, okay. Well, there's an interesting thing.
'Cause I have sales every day.
Okay, gotcha.
And I like to stay on top of it. And I use a spreadsheet that I created called Joan's Ugly Spreadsheet. Okay. And I have a video called Joan's Ugly Spreadsheet and how to use it.
Gotcha.
And that people can download. And I'll send you a link. I'm pretty sure it's prosperityplace.com/spreadsheet.
Okay.
And it allows you to write down all your monthly expenses, your credit card bills, your all the things you have to pay monthly and the date they're due, and how much money you have on hand and how much you project is coming in for the next month or two. Because for small businesses, you don't know what you're going to have 6 months from now. And I show you how to do it and how to work out the numbers, so you can see there's a thing in the beginning, in the middle, that shows how much you have on hand, how much you need, how much is left over, and how much is coming in. And that number, how much is left over, is either a plus or a minus.
Yeah.
And if it's a minus, you know what you have to adjust. And for people who are making $25,000 a month, it depends upon, some people have a lot of little expenses. Other people have big expenses. Some people have very few business expenses and lots of personal expenses. So there's no rule for one person, but there are principles. And when someone tells me I check my bank balance online every day, I know they're not managing their cash flow. Yeah. Let's talk about why you want to do this. You want to do this so that you can strategize with your money. So you can say, okay, 80% of my money is coming from this particular source, 20%, it's the 80-20 rule. And so where is the top amount of money coming from? And where am I putting a lot of effort in with only a small percentage is coming from that? Well, then I'm going to give less energy to that and more energy to the other thing. And if I'm keeping track, and I have one report in QuickBooks that measures where I can look at my monthly profit and loss all in one screen, and I can see the trajectory, and I can see when it's going up, and I see when it's slipping. So, like this month, I'm a little bit behind where I was last month. So I'm saying to myself, do I need to do a webinar? Because I know the things that I can do to bring in more money.
Right, right. Very good. That's that's the real things that I think make the biggest difference is doing that gut check. I know
Uh-huh.
that that's sort of how I started. I had just like I had Matt's ugly spreadsheet. I did the
Yes.
same thing, but it was more realistic to just like here's where I am. If you logistically carry it out, I'll know where I'll end up. Meaning that it's it's the middle of the month. I'm at X $1,000. Well, if I keep in this trajectory, I'm going to end up at here. And one of the things that's when you start to get larger is that the receivables get larger, and it's almost hard to predict where receivables end up because projects get in our industry and in agency business, they could go out for months. So what and this is just goes right back to your story, which is keeping an eye literally closer than just that. I've been very good at keeping snapshots, but only in windows. But if I take the windows down a little bit and look at the QuickBooks in general, all of it, it would probably give me a better viewpoint. And now that you said look at it daily, I'm thinking about this like it only takes a second to log in. I just don't do it.
Are you using QuickBooks Online?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I don't like QuickBooks Online. I had used it for a while, but it doesn't give me as many reports as I get from the desktop version.
Yes, I know.
And to me, the reports are really important. I have reports that show me how much I've made from every one of my products and every one of my clients. I
Right.
mean, there's just so much I can learn. But you're trying, and I do it. I'm not going to say every single day, but because some days I'm just tied up with clients or something all day long, or I get involved in a video project and I'm just in that flow and I don't get out of it. I try in the morning though to look at my QuickBooks and see what's going on and see if I have to pay anything that day, because I don't. Some people will just pay their bills like once a month or twice a month. I have a lot of stuff on automatic, and some stuff is not. And so I like to keep track of where I am and what I have to pay, and yeah, it's fairly complicated, but I've gotten to really like it. It's like playing Monopoly.
Right. You have to do it. You have to get used to it. It's what you're really saying.
It's just a habit. It's just
Yeah.
another one of those habits. And I'm coming from a place where I had gone away, I had given everything I owned away, and I was on what I call my spiritual journey, and was meditating a good part of the day, every single day. And I was having these wonderful experiences and mystical experiences. And when I came back, I realized that no one knew what I was talking about. And I had to, first of all, clean up my vocabulary because I was talking, somewhere else. And I got my pilot's license,
Wow.
which is very left brain. It's all math.
Right.
And I didn't get my pilot's license because I wanted to balance my brain. I just got this urge one day to take flying lessons.
Wow.
I've learned to listen to that inner voice. And I was in Venice, California. So I was flying out of Santa Monica Airport, which is the busiest TCA in the country. So it was quite a job to learn to fly out of Santa Monica. And it balanced my brain so that I could work with numbers more easily.
Wow.
And I could pay attention to those little things that keep you from dying.
Wow. So now, do you still fly?
No, I haven't done it in a long time. None of my friends flew. When I was in LA, I had a friend who was going for his instructor's license.
Wow.
So he liked to fly right seat.
Ah.
And so we would rent a plane for a day and get some people to fly in the back seat, and we'd go on little journeys. But I really didn't like flying by myself, and I thought other pilots would be fun but they're pretty much left brain, very they don't do
Right, I understand.
the stuff that I did when there was a period in the New Age world where the harmonic convergence was happening, and
Wow.
all the planets were supposed to line up, and it was a big thing. And I had my crystal business at that point, so
Right.
I was into New Agey things, and so I had my instructor go with me up to 10,000 feet. And I started toning,
Really?
Yeah. I
Wow.
mean, he was sure I was nuts, but that was okay. And to me, it's just all these different experiences. And so for me, that was very good. I don't fly now because you have to do it a lot in order to
Right.
get good at it.
Right.
And I had a series of detached retinas, so I don't see very well out of one eye. So it was just a piece of my life when I got my pilot's license.
So let's talk about that. So, piece of your life. I love the transformational stories.
Yes.
I was watching a movie yesterday. It's called Let Me Be Frank. It's about a guy named Frank Ferrante who, for lack of intensive purposes, was just like a, drug addict, drunk, fat, overweight, typical Jersey guy or Staten Island guy. Sorry, Jersey people. And so he goes to these New Age healers in 2010, I believe, and they basically take him to a vegan restaurant and they tell him, hey, that movie where they take the guy to the McDonald's restaurant and all he does is eat McDonald's for a month and he gets liver problems and he breaks down. Well, we're going to do the opposite with you. We're going to take you who all you do is just gorge and whatever, and we're going to put you on a vegan diet for the next 40 days. And so the guy goes through this enormous transformation of just sort of like a down and out guy to now he's a speaker and he's like this high end, super duper, new guy. He's really thin. He looks like he's a jet setter. But the whole point is that these transformations can happen so quickly, and. Right. And to go and I'll put all the notes to the show in the post, but so I listen to a lot of the things that you talk to people. I think you create a lot of transformation with people.
Yes.
And so that's sort of what I'm really interested in talking about. Maybe you could give us an example of a really successful transformation that you've seen with someone, either financially wise or even life wise, that you've worked with.
Okay, I've got a client who I don't want to give too many details because it's confidential, but he sold a medical practice for a couple $1 million and lost it. Been married multiple times. Very anxious, really didn't understand what to do with his life. And within a month, his life changed dramatically.
Wow.
He said to me after our first session, and one of the processes I did with him, he said, I've never felt so calm in my entire life. That was one session.
Wow.
Okay. So, and we made a deal that he's not going to get married again because he has a tendency, he doesn't like to hurt people's feelings, and he winds up getting married. So, and he just broke up with someone. And I taught him, if one of us has to be uncomfortable, it doesn't have to be me.
Wow.
And no is a complete sentence. And so he was able to, I'm amazed at the transformation he's gone through in the last 6 weeks. It's been amazing. And some people are afraid to change, and others are ready to change.
Right.
Sometimes when they're afraid to change, it just takes a little longer.
Right.
I'll have people who are not moving forward because they're so afraid of making a mistake. So we find out where that comes from, and we take little steps to get to a point where you can trust yourself.
Right.
Every person is so different. I call myself a business and money coach because I don't know what else to call myself. And is it a transformational coach? yes and no, but I want that money piece in there.
Right. Well, that
Because
helps.
part of the transformation is being able to transform how you interact with the world. And you interact the world with your communication skills and with your financial skills. Because finances, money is the currency of relationship.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Very good.
And if you don't have a good relationship with money, then you probably don't have a good relationship with yourself and the world around you. You may be withdrawn, you may not be able to get the kind of business that you want to get because there's something about you that's contracted and holding back. And I don't think you can separate you from your money.
Right. Oh, that's just awesome. You hit it, and this is why I'm saying that I think of you not necessarily in the financial world, but I know that's really tied to it. I think of you trying to get people to expose something that they're missing or they don't understand, and I think this is the biggest challenge with a lot of people is that they stand in front, they don't know what's blocking them, and I think
Yes, and that's usually the person who comes to me says, I've been on the personal growth path forever and something's in my way and I don't know what it is.
yes,
And that's really what they come to me. That's the basic sentence that I hear most often.
right, right,
And because I've been doing this for so long and I'm pretty intuitive,
right,
and so when I get a little bit of the story about what their father did and what their mother did and what a little bit about, just a little bit, it takes me about 15 minutes to get a picture of where they're coming from, and then I can figure it out.
yeah. So real cool that you brought this up because I've never heard anybody talk about this in any other podcast where you brought it back to almost to the baby level.
Interuterine.
Yes, I've never
Interuterine.
heard of that before, but it made so much sense. It was like, oh, wow, I never thought about it because that influence starts so early.
Well, let me give you an example. When I was born, first of all, my mother spent 8 months in bed while she was pregnant with me.
Right.
So it was an unusual so it explains why I retreat to peace and quiet and to be, even though I'm an extrovert, there's a part of me that needs to spend an inordinate amount of time alone and in quiet. And I see that comes from there. But when I was born, I had a birthmark all over a good part of my face. It went like this and like this and like this. And I realized that when I was born, my parents recoiled a bit.
Right.
Now, the baby has no verbal skills. It's a mass of psychic experience and what's around it. So I realized that part of my problem socially was that I expected people to recoil when they met me.
Right. Got it.
I
Yeah.
felt that they would find something about me very unattractive, and yet my mother had a lot of empathy towards me at the same time.
Right.
So that was my first minute in life.
Right.
That's where it started.
Right.
And then I remember my father telling the story. When she was 6 months old, she drooled on me, and I never touched her again.
Right.
And that was true.
Right.
So I got a lot of messages saying that I was not okay, and I had to. And my mother wasn't the warmest person in the world. She had a mother who never was touching or anything.
Right.
My mother did the best she could, but it's just who she was. And so I had to learn how to be touched and how to touch and how to touch people in something other than talking. I was a compulsive talker.
Right.
I just wouldn't shut up because that was my way of touching you.
Right.
But once I began to understand these things, then I could say, okay, then what do I need to do instead?
Right. Right.
But you see how early it starts?
Well, that's the thing that gets me. Now we talked that level, but then it goes through your transformation time of your life. And I
Mhm.
think a lot of that happens when you're going from your tweens, young, through your teenage years, and now into sort of adulthood, where, to me, I think that's a period when there's got to be guidance. And I think a lot of this financial problem comes in that area. When
Well, it's interesting because my father was a compulsive debtor. There was no doubt about it.
Mhm.
He would, and my mother was the co-compulsive debtor. He would go out and buy a boat. He'd come home and I'd hear Bruce,
right,
you know,
understood,
and he had the boat and the foreign car. When I was in high school, in my sophomore year in high school, my father said, "I'm sick and tired of having you ask me for money." And he said, "I'm going to give you $1,000 and that's got to last you for a year." And I said, "Okay." I had no idea what $1,000 meant.
right,
So I said, "Okay." And I got a steno pad and started writing down every week what I spent.
right,
And at the end of the year, I had $300 left over.
right,
Now, when I met my husband to be, I wound up lending him the $300. And the same thing happened with the second husband. And when I had a certain amount of money, my parents borrowed it from me.
right.
So I also learned it didn't pay to save. Okay.
Boy, you're really kind of screwed either way at that point.
Right. But I had that basic knowledge that if you keep track of it, it works.
Right.
But I didn't use that again until much later on. So that was the money piece.
Right.
But yes, I mean, kids who are bullied, it makes a big impression on them, and it affects their life for years afterwards. And, you know, some people are just more resilient than others. And although you can teach resiliency and the ability to think differently, but for kids, what a mess. I mean, it's amazing human beings do as well as they do.
Right.
The problem comes when they get to be adults and they're apparently functioning in the real world, but there's something inside that is just uncomfortable.
Yeah, and so that's the whole transformation piece that I think you pull out of people. Like, what do you think, and we talked about, you know, this at the very infantile of it, but what do you think is the major thing that people can do to kind of try and uncover this, or at least work on thinking about uncovering this? Because that, to me, is like where your skill, your intuition, you mentioned it before, really is amazing.
Well, my book, Build Your Money Muscles, has a good outline as to what to do.
Right.
I break it down between the internal and the external. Every other, it's 9 simple exercises for improving your relationship with money. Very easy book to read. Takes about 3 hours to read and about a year to do.
Right.
And because you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
So if you don't know that you're overspending because you're pissed off at your mate, then, I mean, there's no way that you can know this intuitively unless someone kind of points it out to you.
Right.
Although I figured it out, but my whole goal is to keep people from having to figure it all out by themselves.
Right.
It took me 30 years to figure this stuff out.
Right.
Let me get you going much sooner.
Right.
And if you're willing to look at it, if you're willing to see that nothing you've ever done is bad.
Right.
It's just what you've done.
Right.
And it isn't good or bad. It's just what it is. And you get to decide what you'd rather do instead. And when you try something else, it may not work. But so what?
Right. You did something.
You know, we have to do something during the day. And it really doesn't matter what we do during the day.
Right.
None of this matters.
Right.
Bottom line, none of this matters.
Right.
So you do something and you say, is it working? And if it's not, well, let me try something else. Some people are so attached to what they've done and they're so afraid of making more mistakes that they don't say, well, what went wrong and how can I fix it?
Right. No, I know it's, and I think for busy solopreneurs or busy entrepreneurs, I don't think there's enough time in the day to them to sit and look at the business from 10,000 feet either. Where,
Uh, 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 uh. There is enough time. It's your thinking that you have to do more for the business that's getting in your way.
right, right,
When the business is there to support you.
right,
Okay, so I work from 7:30 in the morning till approximately 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
right.
Then I go walk my dog. Anyone who knows me knows they call up after 4 o'clock. They go, "Oh, Joan, you must be at dog park," and
Right.
and it's true. That's pretty much where I am after 4. So I have very specific boundaries for my business.
Wow.
I don't turn the computer on Sundays. Now that I have an iPad and a smartphone, I'll check my email. But I'm a compulsive learner. That's my one
Sure.
addiction. So I love to look things up online, and I use my phone for that. But I don't work. I
Right.
don't write anything, and I need that day to clear my mind out. And entrepreneurs are particularly solopreneurs, are so afraid they're going to miss something
Yes.
that they work and work and work and work, and they're missing their life.
Yeah. No, very true. And I think the social equation in here, people missing out on something in social world, even takes it to the next level where they get completely involved into hours of time trying to look at everything that they think they might be missing, but there's really not much there.
Okay, and I believe that whatever I need is going to show up.
Ah, yes.
Okay, now there's certain action steps I have to take.
Right.
Like now I have someone booking me on other podcasts.
Right.
And through that, I'm meeting some wonderful people I have never met before.
Right.
There's someone today, he interviewed me this morning, I'm interviewing him this afternoon.
Right.
And someone who is so far outside of my social circle.
Right.
And I always say, of all the billions of people on the planet, why are these two people talking to each other today? I have the faith that whatever I need is going to show up.
That's awesome. I think that's the way to do it.
I don't need to make as much money as Bill Gates or as Warren Buffett. I don't have to be the richest person on the block.
Right.
I'm perfectly satisfied with my life. How many people do you know can say that?
None.
Well, you know me now.
Yeah. So speaking of being satisfied, I noticed that you are super healthy for your age.
Yes.
And you seem to have unlimited energy.
Yes.
And I want to take this back to, the story that I related earlier in this episode about the changing of dietary habits and health habits. Can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, this is, most people, when they're, in their sunsetting age, let's just call it, even I'll take my parents, it's just to get them to stand and walk outside is an absolute, it's like I'm bringing them to the death camp or something, I'm like, and I don't, and it's like, I can't fight it anymore. I'm like, all right, well, I don't know what to do. Maybe I should just.
That's their choice they've made.
Yeah.
When I was in my early 30s, the doctors told me I could never be healthy, that I should get used to that I was a hypochondriac, and I should just get used to all my physical disorders. I was a mess, physically, emotionally, just a mess, taking lots of prescription drugs and eating more sugar than you can imagine. There was a guy, when I was growing up, there was a guy in Paterson, New Jersey, called the Chocolate Man. He delivered. And once every 2 weeks, he'd show up with chocolate bark and almond bark and chocolate-covered crackers. And
nice.
I mean, I was into chocolate and sugar.
Right.
Until I collapsed. And for me, the transformation started in 1973 when I saw a documentary on hypoglycemia. I went to the doctor and said, I've got hypoglycemia. he said, "You're just a hypochondriac, but I'll give you the test anyhow."
Right.
And my blood sugar went so low, he couldn't imagine why I was still alive. You know, and I got a book called Low Blood Sugar and You, and I just gave up sugar.
Right.
And so I started meditating and asking people about a doctor who knew about hypoglycemia, and I found an endocrinologist who handed me a piece of paper that said, no peas, no beans, no corn, no rice, no potatoes, no bread, no grapes, no bananas, no watermelon, no sugar, no white flour, no caffeine.
Wow.
And he said, if you follow this, you won't be depressed anymore. And I had been a suicidal depressor for 15 years.
Wow.
And I went home and followed exactly what he told me to do. And within 2 days, I wasn't depressed, but my body went into such shock for making such a big change that I went through all sorts of stuff. And I finally read this biochemistry textbook and figured out my gluconeogenesis wasn't working. I mean, it was really complex. And it turned out that I had a lot of other things. But that was the beginning of my transformation.
Right.
And I've just been willing. I don't know where the willingness comes from. I have just been willing to do whatever I need to do to make my life better.
That's awesome.
And I don't know where I got that push to do that.
Right.
Because so many people are so afraid to try something new, whereas I had a therapist, and I went through plenty of therapy along the way, who said to me that I was counterphobic, which meant that I would do whatever I was afraid of. And she thought that was a disease.
I love that. Counterphobic. I'm going to have to use that for my clients.
And it's true. If I'm afraid of something, I'll try it just to get over the fear. I've done the firewalk and ropes courses, and I got my pilot's license. And
right.
And I as soon as I'm afraid to do something, I say, okay, let me give it a try. And you commented that I have a lot of energy and I'm young for my age. It's because I keep moving forward.
Yes.
And I don't buy into I love it when they say the elderly and babies have to get flu shots. I've never had a flu shot, and I don't get sick because I've got such a strong immune system.
Right.
And we've been led to believe that we need drugs and we need to get disease, and thank God I had this endocrinologist who took care of me in those early days and taught me what I had to do. And it's so simple. It's give your body the fuel it needs to function.
Right.
It's like if you put the wrong octane fuel in your body, in your car, it's gonna ping.
Yep.
Well, symptoms are pings.
Yep.
So
well,
get better octane fuel.
Okay.
Now you have to be willing to give up the sugar and the desserts and the everything that tastes so good, but it's a false enjoyment because you're getting the immediate gratification. But if you want to live long, it's those last 5 years that you're aiming towards, that you shouldn't have to be in an old age home someplace.
Right.
And you're just going to be active till the day you die.
That's awesome. So I wanted to ask you one last question. This has been great. I mean, there's so many things in this short time we spent together that are just actionable and great content for people to listen to and listen over again. Some of the things that I see, and all the stuff about the last discussion you said about being healthy with the things that you had to eat and didn't eat, and I think the only thing I would be concerned about would be the coffee and caffeine in there. I think I'm still have to think about that, but
I do green tea. I didn't have any caffeine for 35 years. Now I drink a cup of green tea in the morning.
Good. I feel okay now. So you're not exactly pure, right?
Well, no, there's nothing. No, the reason I started drinking the green tea was because studies show that 1 cup of caffeine a day is actually good for you.
Awesome. Good. I feel better. So one of the things I wanted to bring up, and we'll make this the last point. I feel that the people have got to a level where they don't understand real joy, meaning that we're oversaturated with alcohol. Everybody's trying to, have their existence be as exciting as possible. If I want to go out, I need to go out and have 5 drinks, or I need to have 3 caffeine super Red Bulls, and the whole experience has to be super. Where the joys of just regular being, I think, are starting to like disappear. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a level of trying to have this extremism where there's joy in just like looking out the window and watching stuff go by.
It's all about the adrenal glands.
Yes, that's what I was getting to.
Okay, it's all about the adrenal glands. People are exhausted because their adrenal glands have been overworked.
Yep.
And they keep looking for stimulation for their adrenal glands.
Yes.
The problem is when you hurt your adrenal glands, you really hurt your entire physical system.
Yep.
And I had such adrenal exhaustion that I could not get from my bedroom to my living room. I had zero energy. And so my life is built around keeping my adrenal glands happy. And I tell people to start by making the rule of never going through a yellow light.
Good luck in New Jersey, holy cow. How about just don't go through the red lights?
Yeah, they say, how do you know the New Mexico native, the 7th person through the red light?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Never be in a hurry.
Right.
Because when you're in a hurry, you're missing the now of your life.
Right. Yes.
Okay? And if I feel myself the least bit stressed because I have a lot of clients and a lot going on and a lot of interviews, I make sure to double my meditation time in the morning.
Gotcha.
When I go to dog park, it's not like this little piece of grass with a fence around it. In Santa Fe, we have this dog park with trails that are a mile and more long and you can stand on the hill and look at the whole city. And the sky in New Mexico is enormous.
Right.
And I go there every day to expand my mind.
Gotcha.
And to get my mind out of the day and to pay attention to the dogs and what they think is important, because they're the real teachers in life.
Right.
And it's a decision you have to make. And if you're afraid that you're not getting enough done every day, you're functioning from fear, and fear and joy don't go together.
Right. It's just great explanation. I couldn't put it better. Joan, I hate to end this, but look, we're going on about almost 50 minutes now, and I really loved it. And I wanted to only go 30 minutes, but it's just too much fun. And maybe we can do another episode again at some point. But
Sure.
All the things you talked about were great, and I'll put all the notes in about the your book and the other things. Is there anything else you'd like to mention as at the end of this, so that our listeners will know? I mean, obviously we know your website address, but anything else that you want to mention?
Well, on Prosperity Place is the best place to find me.
Yeah.
And the words I like to leave people with is, you're a good girl or boy, and you've never done anything wrong, and love yourself. That's really the bottom line. Is because
Oh, wow.
when you can love, acknowledge, accept, and appreciate yourself, first of all, that's when you're going to get paid, and your life is going to be a whole lot better.
It's awesome. Thank you, Joan. Thank you so much for this, and I can't wait till the next time we speak.
My pleasure. Thank you. Bye.